Much of my work with the I Ching was very gradually bringing me to realize that the ego was not me. It was instead a false self that was the product of the conditioning that we undergo in our culture. We're told, as I mentioned earlier, that very early on we need to be somebody, which implies falsely that we are nobody. The breakthrough for me came with 2 meditations in which I saw myself as Queen Elizabeth being lectured what to think and what to do by the Prime Minister. I was Queen Elizabeth. I had just watched the BBC series on Queen Elizabeth, and sometimes the sage uses what we see the day before or the week before, brings it up in an image that is useful for teaching. And I realized that in this meditation that I was the Queen, not the Prime Minister. But that the Prime Minister was saying, you should do this and you must do that. You have to do it this way. And I realized that that was also a voice in my head that controlled most of my actions. What I should do, what I must do, how I need to conform, what others think of me, and all kinds of other expressions. That was one of the first meditations that helped me realize that it was not me. The second came at a different time to help me understand a situation that was going on. I had, by that time, worked quite a long time in divesting myself of self-images that make up the ego. In this meditation, I saw my husband parading on a very brightly lit stage in an Elizabethan costume with lace at the hands and lace collar and a feather in his hat and high hip boots, very fancily dressed. And he was parading across the stage this way and that way. And I noticed that on his costume were a number of titles: poet, photographer, intellectual, a number of titles that granted him some kind of validation. After seeing him parade back and forth, my eyes were drawn to a figure on the side that I hadn't noticed, and it was him in a kind of feed sack cloth, sitting bound up. His hands were tied. He had a gag on his mouth. He was obviously constrained. What was particularly noticeable was that sweat was coming out in drops like this, and that he was suffering terribly. And this was a very great demonstration to me of what the ego does to the true self. It suppresses it, does not allow it to say anything, does not allow it to express its feelings. And that made me realize that the ego is an enemy in the personality, is not a help. And furthermore, it takes credit for all of our successes, and it also blames the true self when it has proposed something that fails.